So yeah, welcome to the webinar. This is the fifth in a series of seven, where we're looking at each individual clause of the ISO management systems 9, 14, 45, 27001 and 22301. And today we're going to be looking at clause 8 operations. So before we start, just a little bit about ourselves, who we are. Well, we're CertiKit, a leading creator of compliance toolkits and providers of ISO services. And we're based in Derbyshire in the UK, central England. Been around since 2010, and we've helped more than 4,000 customers globally achieve compliance to the relevant standard or data security requirements. We specialize in standards and data protection compliance, toolkits and consultancy. And our mission is to make compliance easy for our clients to achieve the certification they want and to gain the benefits from their chosen standards or data protection regulations. So that's a bit about the business. A little bit about me. I'm Ted. I'm one of CertiKit's 2 compliance consultants. My sidekick today, Jerry, is the other CertiKit compliance consultant. I'm responsible for the ISO management systems, including 9, 14, 45, and 22301, and assisting new and current CertiKit customers with either moving towards certification or answering any questions they have on those standards. I'm also the technical author for some of these documents, and I assist in the development of the toolkits. So any new ideas, any changes in the toolkits that come along, I'm one of the people that put those into the new toolkits that then go into the new, not new, but when we push them out to our clients, they'll get the latest updates. I'm a certified 9014, 45, 22301, and since December last year, 27001 lead auditor, and I've experience covering 20 years across a huge variety of business sectors and businesses from 2 people up to multinationals worldwide. I'm also a certified lead integrated management system implementer for 9014 and 45, where I've been able to merge 2 or 3 of these management systems into one management system rather than you having 2 or 3 separate ones. And like my colleague, I'm a black belt Six Sigma practitioner, which helps me when I'm looking at processes and procedures and things like that. So what we're going to be covering today, we're going to look at what is clause 8, and then look at the clause 8 as per 9001 standard, the 14, the 45, and the 27,000. We'll look at each of the clause 8s and those, the sub-clauses, and how they link with other parts of the standard for each individual management system. And then we'll end up with a summary and questions at the end of that. So in the context of ISO management systems, clause 8 refers to the operations part of the standard. This is the fundamental part of the ISO management standards, such as 9, 14. It's in all of the standards right across. The purpose is to provide guidelines and requirements for effectively implementing the processes and activities that you feel are necessary to achieve your objectives and to deliver your products or services in line with your policies and your plans. It covers a range of topics related to day-to-day operations of organization and its management system, and the specific contents may vary depending on the type of management system. But some that are common that we see all over the place are operational planning, which involves defining processes and resources. It includes considerations for identifying risks, opportunities, potential impacts on quality or environment, health and safety, and other relevant aspects. Resource management ensures the necessary resources, whether that's human, the infrastructure, technology, assets, machinery, cash, time, are all available and allocated appropriately to support the operations of the management system and the organization's overall objectives. Products and services covers the processes involved in creating, producing, and delivering the organization's products and services while adhering to the specific requirements, which include quality, environmental, and safety criteria. Control of processes, products and services. And emergency responses. So products, implementing controls to ensure that processes and product services meet the defined standards requirements and also your own requirements. And this may involve inspections and testings, monitoring, corrective actions, etc., etc. For emergency responses, we're looking at establishing plans and procedures to handle potentially emergencies or unexpected situations that could impact upon your operations, your safety, the safety of the people around you, or your environment and the immediate environment around you. Performance evaluation. This looks at monitoring, measuring, analysing relevant data to assess the performance of your processes, your products, and your services against established objectives and criteria. Improvement, identifying opportunities for improvement and taking corrective action and preventive actions as necessary to enhance the organisation's operations and management systems. So in essence, from these 7, and these are just the ones that are generalised across all of the standards, at some point within Clause 8, there'll have been these in there. Operation guides organisations on how to execute their plans, deliver their products and services, and maintain the effectiveness of their management system in line with the defined requirements and the policies. It emphasises the practical implementations of the management system standards, helping organisations to achieve a consistent and desirable outcome while managing risks and opportunities. Clause 8 is effectively the backbone of your management system. Everything else around it either feeds into it or is fed from. And as we go through the individual Clause 8s of the different standards, we'll see how they do get fed from and feed into this clause. Super important clause. I'm going to kick off by looking at Clause 9. Clause 9 requires you to plan, control, and implement processes necessary for the service to conform with your requirements and the requirements of the standard. It also has mandatory procedure. It has the only mandatory procedure in 9001, which is Clause 8.4, control of externally provided processes, products and services, or in a nutshell, supplier management. So looking at it in a bit more depth, the following subsections are in Clause 8 of 9001. And of all the management systems, this has the most sub-clauses. Operational planning and control. So this sub-clause emphasises the importance of systematically planning and controlling the processes needed to produce products and services that meet your customers' requirements. It involves you defining the criteria for your processes, ensuring the availability of resources, and identifying risks and opportunities that could affect the quality of the output. 8.2, requirement for products and services. In this subclause, organisations are required to establish and document the criteria for reviewing, verifying and validating products and services requirements. And this is to ensure that customers' needs and expectations are clearly understood and then translated into specific characteristics that the products and services must possess. So this is looking at what the customer needs and how you are going to meet that customer's needs. And whether that's a product like a chair or a sofa or a service like consultancy or training, Clause 8.2 requires you to look at that and review how and validate how you're going to do that. Clause 8.3, design and development of products and services. Organisations follow a structured approach to design and development, including identifying design inputs, conducting reviews, verifying designs, and validating them to ensure they meet the specified requirements before moving into production. This is your checksum for your products and services. Very important if you're doing software design or software creation, where you've got to look at your software, make sure you've got it in the right place, ensure you understand where it's going to go, what you're going to do to check it later on, and how you're going to validate that data. But the same goes for manufacturing and also for service delivery. This, as I stated before, is the only mandatory procedure you have to have in 9001. All the rest are nice to have. So control of externally provided products and services. This subclause pertains to the controlling of quality of products and services that are provided by your external suppliers, your suppliers. Now, whether that is materials coming in as a manufacturer to then produce for their widgets that they then sell on to the customers. If it's a service provider, it could be you're using cloud services to provide that service to other people. They're a supplier. You've got to think about how they have an impact upon you. So that's what this clause is all about. It states the organizations are required to assess and select suppliers based on their ability to meet quality standards, establish clear requirements, and monitor supplier performance. So it is a supplier management requirement that's mandatory in 9001. 8.5, production service provision. This subclause addresses the actual processes of producing and providing those services. And it covers factors such as control and production and service provision, ensuring product and service conformity, preventing mix-up, and preserving the integrity of products during and handling and storage. These are your SOPs, your standard operating procedures. If you're a manufacturer, your contingency procedures, if it's an emergency type thing, all of these sit within 8.5. 8.6 is the release of products and services. Before products and services are delivered to customers, organizations must have a process in place to verify that all requirements have been met. So this is where you get your QC sticker on the bottom of your electronics that you're selling, or on a chair or something. It means it's gone through quality control, and that's what this clause is all about, is quality control within 9001. So this would include inspections, tests, approvals to ensure that the final output is of the desired quality. And of course, if it's not, clause 8.7, the last one in clause 8, this subclause deals with products and services that do not meet the establishment requirements, and these are referred to as non-conforming outputs. And this is where the organization needs to have procedures for identifying, segregating, evaluating, and taking appropriate actions on such non-conformities to prevent their unintended use or delivery. So this is your catch at the end of the production line, where something slipped through QC, but somebody's caught it. These are what you put in place to catch that, and what you're going to do with it, whether you put it to one side in a segregated area so it can't be used again, or it gets recycled down the line, whatever it is. This subclause is what is required within clause 8 of 9001. So these clauses collectively emphasize the significance of meticulous planning, of effective control, continuous monitoring to ensure that products and service consistently meet or exceed customers' expectations. Adhering to these clauses help organizations enhance their quality management system and ultimately deliver better value to the customer. It's the old rule of thumb: do it right once, do it right every time. Links to other areas in the 9001 standard. So this clause focuses on the operational processes within the organization, as we just said, and ensures that products and services meet the customer's requirements and are delivered effectively. But they have got an alignment with other clauses. So as you can see here, clause 4, context of organization. The context analyzes and identifies external and internal factors that can affect the organization's operations, helping determine the risk and opportunities. Clause 4.1 and 4.2 asks you to look at the internal and external issues that could affect your operations. And 4.2 looks at your interested parties internally and externally that could have effect on your operations. So this links closely with clause 8, because they could have an input upon your products. They could have an impact upon your services. So you need to consider that factor when you're looking at Clause 8. Clause 5, leadership. Leadership's commitment to quality and their involvement in the operational processes are again critical for successful implementation. It does state in Clause 5.1 that the top person of the company, the CEO, the MD, the chairman, has overall responsibility for the management system. It's not the quality manager, it's not the information security manager, it's not the health and safety manager. The CEO, MD, or the chairperson has ultimate responsibility. So therefore, they have an impact upon Clause 8. And then Clause 6, planning. Quality objectives are established and operational planning takes place to achieve these objectives. Also within Clause 6 are planning of changes, which could have an effect upon Clause 8 operations. Objectives could have an impact or take a feed from your processes for products and services. Also, Clause 7. In here, these are resources. So Clause 7 support are resources. That includes competent personnel, ensuring you have the right infrastructure for you to fulfill your requirements for construction, production, whatever it is. Do you have the right equipment? All of this is Clause 7, and this is how it impacts on Clause 8. So Clause 7, you identify what you need for your processes to succeed. Clause 9, performance evaluation, monitoring, evaluation, measuring, analysing and evaluating operational performance to help identify areas of improvement. Clause 9 by itself does that, but within Clause 8, as you saw there for Clause 8.6, where we're looking at the QC side, this is where Clause 9 gets some of its information from. From you doing your quality control and your checks will feed into Clause 9 for them to then produce the information that they need to then goes into the management review meeting, etc. And then finally, Clause 10, action to improve operational processes. And these are taken based on results of performance evaluation. So this is where 9 and 10 link, and also links back to Clause 8 as well, where you're looking at 8.6 and 8.7 non-conforming outputs. All take a feed into Clause 10 and Clause 9. So it's not an isolated clause, as you will see as we go through the other standards. It actually feeds into and feeds from other clauses throughout its entirety. So that's 9001. There is a lot of information in there. I'm sorry if it's a little bit fast, but we've got a lot to get through. But it is the backbone of your quality management system. Now we'll look at 14001, environmental management. So what we're going to do is look again at Clause 8 and the requirements of Clause 8, looking at the operational planning, the emergency response, and environmental monitoring. So the following subsections make up Clause 8 of the 14001, which is operational planning control. And this subclause highlights the importance of planning and controlling an organisation's operations in such a manner that it takes into account the potential environmental impacts. It requires an organisation to establish and maintain procedures that ensure that their operations are carried out in accordance with environmental objectives and targets set in earlier phases of the environmental management system. So we're looking at Clause 6 here. The aim is to prevent or minimise adverse environmental effects and promote sustainable practices. So in 14001 speak, we're looking at aspects of your operations and their potential impacts on their environment. And in Clause 8.1, that's what they talk about, is aspects and impacts. In Clause 8.2, we're looking at the emergency preparedness and response to incidents that happen. So this subclause focuses on preparing for and responding to environmental emergencies. So organisations need to identify potential environmental emergencies, establish procedures to address them, periodically test and review these procedures to ensure that they're effective. The aim is to minimize the impact of an emergency on the environment, to human health and to the safety and to the environment itself. The sort of key points that that are addressed within this subclause: the emergency preparedness, the organisation must develop plans to effectively respond to various types of environmental emergencies. And these could be such as spills, leaks, emissions, anything that could harm the environment. Response procedures, they're looking for clear procedures and responsibilities that must be defined for managing emergencies. And within those procedures, they'll be looking for communication and containment and corrective actions. Training and drill. Personnel should be drilled and trained in the emergency response procedures. There's no good having them in documents and waiting for it to happen before you open the documents and go, oh, well, this doesn't work. So the standard requires you to exercise these procedures. Continuous improvement, lessons learned from emergency situations should be used to improve emergency response. I mean, this is common sense stuff that you do an exercise and something doesn't work, you review it, you update it, that's an improvement. These clauses collectively guide an organisation in aligning their operations with environmental objectives and minimising the negative environmental impact and being prepared to handle emergencies that might arise. So the old Boy Scout, be prepared. This approach helps organisations demonstrate the commitment to sustainable practices and responsible environmental management. And it is a big step towards net zero and offsetting your carbon footprints. So environmental management 14,001 helps in those aspects as well. Only 2 subclauses in this section, but within each subclause, there's quite a chunk of subclause requirements. And looking at the links to the other side, to the other clauses within the standard. So operations focuses on the implementation of environmental controls and measures to identify significant environmental aspects and ensure compliance with legal and regulatory requirements, Environmental Act, and things like that. The alignment to the other clauses. So clause 4, context of the organisation. Just understanding the environmental context helps to identify the environmental aspects and impacts to be addressed. So clause 4.1 and 4.2 again, so you're looking at your internal and external issues and your interested parties. Clause 5, leadership, is crucial for the effective implementation of controls. And then clause 6, environmental planning objectives, targets set, operational planning takes place and achieves these objectives. Again, these are linked to clause 8, outputs and requirements. With clause 7, support resources awareness and competence are provided to support operational processes. Again, competent people. Have you got the right resources to ensure your contingency plans, emergency plans, have the right equipment, the right personnel are in place? Do you have the right measurement tools to ensure that you're doing what you say you're doing? All of that comes under clause 7 in support. Clause 9, the evaluation, again, is looking at your performance against objectives and the performance that you set against your control of emissions, controls of leakage, etc., etc. And then clause 10, actions to improve environmental performance are based upon the results of performance evaluations and also from exercises from your emergency procedures. All of these lead to improvements. So like 9001, 4 and 5 and 6, 4, 6 and 7 feed into it, 9 and 10 feed out of it. 45,001, the health and safety management system, requires you to control hazards and have their mitigation, manage change in procurement, and prepare for emergency responses. So the following subsection makes up clause 8 of 45,001. So the first is operational planning and control. So this clause emphasises the need for the organisation to establish and maintain procedures to effectively plan, implement and control their operational processes in a manner that addresses health and safety risks and opportunities. And the primary goal of this is to prevent work-related injuries, illnesses and accidents. Key aspects of that clause is the identification of hazards and risks, where you need to identify potential hazards in the operational processes and then assess the associated risks to workers within the health and safety within that area. Also, you need to determine the necessary controls based on those hazards and risk assessments to put in to mitigate or eliminate those hazards and reduce the associated risks. And then operational controls, which are your procedures and measures that are established to ensure that workers are protected from those identified hazards during their tasks. Now, this might involve specifying safe working practices, using PPI, personal protective equipment, or implementing engineering controls. So all of that sits within subclause 8.1. 8.2, the management of change and emergency preparedness and response. This clause addresses the need for organisations to manage the change that could impact upon health and safety, and that includes modification to processes and equipment, personnel and working. You need to be able to identify. You need to identify those changes and have processes in place to assess the change and how it could affect health and safety, and therefore you ensure the potential risks associated with those changes have been recognised and addressed. And the assessment of the impact before implementing the changes. Don't make a change without thinking what's going to happen. You need to assess the impact of that change, again, with health and safety. And that goes along with communication and training for health and safety emergency procedures. And the monitoring and review of changes and health and safety on health and change, monitoring the effect of changes on health and safety on a regular basis, not just after the change, but not just during the change, but after the change and a period after the change to make sure that that impact or potential impact has been mitigated. So these clauses guide you to effectively manage your operational processes to ensure that your health and safety of your workers are met. And by identifying risks and implementing controls and managing changes carefully, you can maintain a safe and healthy work environment and continuously improve the health and safety management system performance. Only two sub clauses again for 45,001. And the links to the other clauses. Again, as we've done with the other two, it will feed from and it will feed into. So go into it, clause 4. Again, you're looking at 4.1 and 4.2, external internal issues that could affect the health and safety of your workers in place, and the requirements of your your interested parties externally and internally that could affect the health and safety. So clause 4.2 feeds into this quite nicely, and that's fed in through 6.1. Clause 5, leadership, again, is crucial for implementing and maintaining effective operational controls, because without the support of the top person, you're not going to get things pushed through when you need them. So if you need extra firefighting equipment, first aid equipment, and you haven't got the support to get that budget through, it's all going to fall over. So clause 5 is an important support for clause 8. And clause 6, objectives and action plans established to control occupational health and safety risks in the operational processes. All objectives are there to improve their management system. And the best way of improving it is by improving clause 8 requirements and inputs and outputs. So by improving your processes and procedures, by improving your emergency preparedness and your emergency response plans, all enhances clause 8 and its ability to make sure that your workers are safe. Clause 7, support. Again, this is resources, training, awareness, all provided towards the operational control of 45,001, making sure you have competent people in place, including the participation of workers. Do you have workers reps who are health and safety reps? It looks at, do you have the right equipment in place? Exactly the same as the other ones. It's the one that supports the requirements of that clause 8. Clause 9 looks at the performance evaluation, monitoring, etc. for your health and safety performance, and also helps in areas of improvement. So as you go through your, excuse me, as you go through your exercises, emergency exercises, and you're reviewing them, you're looking at ways you can improve it. That feeds into the performance evaluation for better improvement. Also, any measurements you take within the workspace, like the temperature of your factory, the flow of air through the factory, the light in the workspace, the computer screens to save your eyesight and things like that. All the measurements that can feed into clause 9 for review at the management review meeting, or to look at improvements in clause 10. And talking of clause 10, again, actions to improve occupational health and safety performance are taken based on the results of the performance evaluations, but also on non-conformities that are created outside of internal audits. So if a worker sees something that they think is a hazard through a process or through a sub-process and has identified that and has alerted the health and safety manager, who then talks to the person who's responsible for that process, it's reviewed. That's a non-conformity that wasn't brought up through an internal audit, which is a same non-conformity but in a different format. Last but not least, 27,001, information security. So you're required to develop operational planning and control, information security, risk assessments, and treatments. And we'll look at how clause 8 addresses those. So the following subsections make up clause 8 of the 27,000 information security. So operational planning and control. This clause focuses on the operational aspect of management information security within the organization. It emphasizes the need to establish processes and controls to ensure information security requirements are met while carrying out daily operations. The key points in this subclause are risk assessment and treatment. So you must continue to assess your risks to their information assets and to implement the appropriate measures to manage and mitigate those risks. In 27,001, the big work on risk assessment and treatment is done in clause 6. However, in clause 8, it is telling you that you have to continue to monitor and measure the risks and the mitigations on a day-to-day basis. It also has a selection of controls. So these are your Annex A controls. So based on the risk assessment of the organization, needs to select and implement the appropriate security controls, the Annex A controls within the 27,001 standard, which provide a comprehensive set of controls addressing various aspects of information security. So not only have you done your risk assessment and treatment and your plans in clause 6.1, you need to look through the list of Annex A controls and see which ones address those risks that you've already identified and whether you need to implement them or not, and put that in your statement of applicability. I just call upon my colleague Jerry, who's the 27,001 guru. Am I right in that assessment, Jerry?
Yeah, pretty much. I have to admit, it's one area of the standard that sometimes get a bit of a grey area. But yes, you do the majority of your risk assessment in clause 6, as Ted said. So basically, you've got your risk methodology, you do your risk assessment, you map your controls, and that to that. And then post risk assessment, obviously you've got to get your SOA document populated with which Annex A controls are relevant to your scope of your management system, which sort of fits in a little bit with this. But then, as Ted mentioned, clause 8.2, I think it is, which is to do with the risk assessment. What clause 8 requires you to do is, and this is typically done through things like your IT steering groups, steering committees, that sort of thing, is always perform regular updates to your risk assessment. Have there been any new risks come in? Obviously, you learn things like that through monitoring things like threat intelligence and vulnerabilities that you as an organization are likely to be up against as part of your cyber threat assessment, and then update any security risk assessment. And I think 8.3 is, I believe, risk treatment. So this is all about, again, through your steering groups and through, you just touch upon this a little bit in management review, but not in any great depth. But obviously there will be a status of risk treatments. You know, are you on track? Are you keeping up to date with the risk treatments? How's things progressing? Because the success of implementing the controls that the standard requires you to address is part. This is where clause 8.3 comes into play. Really, this is saying, you know, don't just say you're going to do these risk treatments and then forget about them. You know, make sure that you're ongoing all the time reviewing where are your risk treatments. Are there any new treatments that we need to apply? Or what's the status of things that we're already applying? And how's the general overall progress of risk treatment activities going? So really that's the nub of clause 8 for 27001.
Cheers, Jerry. So these subclauses collectively guide organizations in establishing effective information security management system, which are crucial in protecting sensitive information from unauthorized access, breaches, and other security threats. And as Jerry says, risk assessment and risk treatment is what this standard is all about. And clause 8 just works on the information that's been done with the hard work in clause 6. This just puts the icing on the cake for that one. And it is a continual process. It's not one that you can do and leave it for a year and review it years later. You're continuously looking at reviewing this all the time. And again, just to look at the links to the other clauses within the standard. So clause 4, the operations, understand the information security context helps to identify risks and opportunities. This is clause 4.1 and 4.2 again, which feeds into clause 6.1 and 6.1.2, which goes into your risk assessments. Clause 5, again, this is the leadership. Without support or leadership, and I've said it for all the other ones, without that support and the backing of senior leadership, it doesn't matter how much effort you put into it, it will taper off and eventually fail. So you have to have that constant support, which is why the management review meeting, which although you only have to do it annually, if you're a newly certified or going for certification, I would suggest every 6 months until you get settled into the management review meeting, has to be chaired by the top man so that he is aware of what's happening within the management system and he can put his stamp of approval on suggestions that come at that forum. Clause 6, so plans to establish to protect information assets and operational processes, and that's done through security risk assessments and risk treatments, and that's a big chunk of work depending on the size of your business. Jerry's just been going through this with a couple of multinationals. These are big bits of work. And then a little bit from the side of that towards the bottom of clause 6 is your information security objectives, planning them and how to achieve them. Again, it's an important part because that feeds into clause 10 for improvement. but it also feeds from clause 8, looking at your processes and things in clause 8. How can we improve them? How can we put an objective in there to improve that? So this is a two-way feed for that one. Clause 7, obviously the right people in the right place with the right training identified, awareness of everybody in the business of the fact that there's an information security management system in place and to be cyber aware and things like that. Have they got the right equipment in place for it to be successful and be effective? All part of clause 7. And clause 9, performance evaluation. Again, are you monitoring your treatments? Are you monitoring your objectives? All that is fed into clause 9, which then feeds into the management review meeting, which is in clause 9. And then last but not least, clause 10, improvements, action to improve information security performance. And these are taken based on the results of clause 9, monitoring measurements, clause 9.2, internal audits, clause 9.3, management review meeting. So in summary, clause 8 of each of the management system deals with operational aspects related to whether it's quality, environmental, occupational health, information security, their standards. The alignment with other clauses ensures that the operational processes are well integrated, that they are effective, that they work in an efficient way, and thereby they contribute to the achievement of the organization's objectives and continuous improvement and the overall effectiveness of the management system. Like I said right at the beginning, clause 8 is the backbone of all your management systems. Clause 9, we've got 7 subclauses in there because there's a lot of work in there looking at your quality outputs for manufacturing or services. For the other ones, there's only 2 or 3 subclauses, but they are all crucial to the effectiveness of your management system. So a little bit about how we can help yourselves, either now, in the future, or later on. We provide ongoing toolkit support and toolkits. So each of our toolkit includes ongoing support. The toolkits have over 100 templates and documents, all that cover the requirements of the relevant standard. Each one is customizable to the business. Each one has examples within it, example text, where you can put your own information on it. There's a lot of generic text that covers the requirements of the standard. So it's a good kickoff point rather than doing documents from scratch and saves a lot of time. With that comes our support package. So you get unlimited emails to people like myself and Jerry and to Ken, the MD, who will answer questions on the toolkits or the management system in itself. You also get review of documents that you produce and access to all the video libraries that we have in all our blogs. Logo replacement service. If you do procure a toolkit or you have a toolkit, some toolkits have 100, I think 27,000 has 197 documents in it. And each of those is customizable with your logo. And there, throughout the documents, is a place for your company name. So you could either do it yourself, 197 documents could take a bit of time, or we can provide a service where we will do that for you. You provide it for the logo and the name you want to put in the place for your company holder, and we'll populate that all throughout the document, throughout the toolkit, and then send it back to you. We also provide our ISO consultancy, and this is where myself and Jerry are employed. And the consultancy can be either an hour's consultancy if you've got a question that you want to expand upon, or you're thinking about implementation. You can book a free hour and we'll talk about how the implementation works, how you should be going through implementation, our suggestions, and how we can help you through that implementation. We also do consultancy as implementers, where we can be employed to help you implement your management system. Now, that can be the bit piece as and when you need us throughout the project, or we can work with you throughout the whole of the project, as we're doing with several of our clients at the moment. And then finally, internal auditing. We do two types. We can come in and do internal audits of your system as internal auditors. So we'd be looking at part of your system as an internal, one of your internal auditors would be if you had internal auditors. And these are known as second party auditors. Or we can do a pre-cert audit. This is where we come in, and it normally takes between 2 or 3 days, because it's not just the audit, it's also the production of the audit report. But we come in as if we were your certification body, and we look at your management system as certification body auditors, and we work out through our audit, are you compliant to everything in the standard? Are there any holes or any potential minor NCs, non-conformities, or major non-conformities? And at the end of that, we produce an extremely complete report that identifies all of the areas, all the good areas and all the potential bad areas, with suggestions on how you need to fix those areas. And that's a full pre-cert audit. So those are the two types of internal audits that we can produce.